Good evening. Welcome to the SABR Central Illinois chapter presentation by Steve Dunn. I'll start off with a bio and also welcome everyone to our first research-oriented Zoom session in the 2024-2025 off-season for baseball. And we're welcoming Steve Dunn tonight, who has 4 decades of newspaper experience before he retired in early 2014 and moved to Des Moines. He worked as a reporter, sports writer, and managing editor for daily and weekly newspapers in 3 states, including the last 15 and a half years as managing editor of the Daily Gate City in Keokuk. He has written 12 bios for the Society of American Baseball Research. All the subjects either played with or worked in the front office of the Chicago Cubs. I won't hold that against you, Steve. They include 3 with Des Moines Tides, John Holland and Salty Saltwell, who worked in the front office of the Bruins in the 1950s, and Randy Hundley, who managed the Iowa Cubs in 1981. The lifelong Cub fan has also written 13 game stories for SABR. In 2022, he self-published a book about the history of professional baseball at the confluence of the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers in Des Moines, Principal Park, A Diamond in the Rough. He was an usher for the Iowa Cubs, the AAA affiliate for the Chicago Cubs from 2015 to 2019 and in 2022. And he graduated from Bradley University in Peoria in 1971 with a bachelor's degree in journalism. And he and his wife Cindy have 2 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, and 4 grandchildren. And his hobbies include bike riding, playing pickleball, volunteering at elementary school in Des Moines, playing his clarinet in the Greater Des Moines Community Band, and hanging out with his grandchildren. So let's all welcome Steve, and we'll get to hear about Des Moines baseball tonight.
Thank you. Actually, I've written 13 bios now for SABR. My latest one is Elvin Tappy, El Tappy from Quincy, Illinois. It was just posted on the SABR website last week, so that's my latest one. Okay, so as I was telling Chad, that this book is actually 7 years in the making, called Pug Fireball and Company, 116 years of professional baseball in Des Moines.
And I also put the chat and link the link in chat for you.
Okay, thanks. So when I interviewed Iowa Cub president and general manager Sam Burnaby in February of 2016, little did I know then that I would be writing a book about the history of professional baseball in Des Moines 7 years later. And by the way, Sam is still at it as the president GM. He's been with the ball club for 41 years of his life. Probably one of the longest running associations with any professional baseball team. My original purpose was to write an article about Principal Park for the Society for American Baseball Research, or SABR. SABR decided not to put the article on its website, but another SABR member agreed to put the story on another baseball website, teamheads.com, and it's probably still on there. The last time I looked, it was still on there. Then in March of 23, I decided to take on the biggest publishing project of my life, a book about the 116-year-old history of professional baseball in Des Moines. And I had the bones of the book thanks to my self-publishing project in 2022, which led to Principal Park, A Diamond in the Rough. But I still needed to do more research to provide as complete a history as possible, because I didn't know that much about the late 1800s, early 1900s of the franchise. So my first tool was newspapers.com, which has more than 24,000 newspapers dating back to the 1700s. That's an online source. I spent a few months researching stories in the Old Des Moines Register and Tribunes and their predecessors, looking up information about the players, the teams, the ballparks, and games as far back as the fall of 1886, when civic leaders such as Charles Sherman, who just happened to be the nephew of William Tecumseh Sherman, the famous Union general, started to organize the first professional team called the Hawkeyes. Kind of ironic, the first team in Iowa in Des Moines baseball history was called the Hawkeyes. Then I visited the Des Moines Public Library and the Iowa Historical Society Research Center in Des Moines to get more information. The research center had a copy of Persinger's Saturday Times from like 1887. They had a wonderful issue of stories about the players or pictures on the front page of that publication. So they let me copy that stuff. Then when I found out that one of my fellow pickleball players worked for the Iowa Oaks and in the early 70s, this was back when AAA baseball came to Des Moines in 1969. So she was working for the Oaks, who happened to be affiliated with the Oakland Athletics. And I asked her if I could interview her to get a first person account of what it was like to work in the early days of the Iowa Cubs. And then she knew the daughter of late King Granquist, who spearheaded a group of investors who bought the franchise in December of 1981. And fortunately for me, both of those women agreed to meet me at the Des Moines Public Library for interviews. And then Sam Burnaby provided a nice foreword for the book. As I said, he spent 41 years with the organization. He received Executive Year Awards from the American Association in 1993, the Pacific Coast League in 2008, and Baseball America in 2014. And by the way, Des Moines is one of the very few franchises that's been in all three major AAA leagues: American Association, Pacific Coast League, and now International League. So by late July, early August of 23, I had a roughly 55,000 page word manuscript and a professional editor, proofreader from California. And then I got the photos from the book which wasn't easy, from John Leap of Des Moines, who has a fantastic Iowa baseball memorabilia collection, and Scott Saylor with the Iowa Cubs. And the print and the ebook versions came out in December of 23. And since then, I built a website and other social media platforms with the help of Amazon Books Publishing, and I've been promoting the book throughout the year, book fairs, author events, whatnot. So with a few exceptions, professional baseball has been played in Des Moines since 1887. A lot of people don't realize that. That's not counting the amateur clubs, such as the Capital City Club that date back to 1866. And people get a kick out of this when they hear the Des Moines franchises had names like Boosters, Bruins, Champions, Demons, Midgets, Oaks, Politicians, Prohibitionists, Undertakers, and currently the Iowa Cubs, or the I-Cubs for short. It's been the Iowa Cubs since 1982. But whatever the name has been, they've entertained millions of fans at 9 venues, at least that's 9 that I could count, in and around the city. Even played in West Des Moines for a while, which is the city west of us. And since the Des Moines became a AAA affiliate in 1969, the club has drawn approximately 19,500,000 fans under 5 ownership groups. And during the 12 of those seasons, the team attracted at least 500,000 spectators that year, which is the gold standard for minor league baseball. So in the fall of 1886, a local attorney, William Park, and a group of businessmen invited Will Bryan of Charleston, South Carolina, to establish a baseball team in Des Moines, professional team. Park was the treasurer and Sherman was the club secretary. They were the most active officers in the group. Then on October 13th of 1886, Des Moines was admitted to the Northwestern League, along with Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Paul, among others. And of course, St. Paul is one of the rivals in the International League. Yeah, it's hard to believe we were in a league with Milwaukee, but they were back in 1887. So on April 14th, 1887, the Hawkeyes defeated the Omahogs. Yes, they were called the Omahogs of the Western League 20-3 in the home opener at Athletic Park on the southwest 7th Street near the Raccoon River. It's about 5 blocks from where the current ballpark is. And here's a good trivia question. Who hit the first home run in franchise history? Gordon Whitley hit the first home run with a 2-run shot on the 6th run, second inning. The game drew about 2,000 people who paid 25 cents for their seats. The game lasted 2 hours and 10 minutes. There was only one umpire, which was not all that unusual for the time. A year later, the Prohibitionists won the Western Association pennant by beating Kansas City, the Blues, 4-1 and 5-3 in early October after finishing 73 and 40 during the regular season. On February 12th, 1900, a new Class B Western League was established at a meeting at the Kirkwood Hotel right here in Des Moines. And Des Moines was one of 6 franchises to play 120-game schedule starting in early May and ending around September 10th. The other teams were Denver, Colorado, Omaha, Pueblo, Colorado, St. Joe, Missouri, and Sioux City, Iowa. Then in the mid-March, they started construction of a new ball field on land between right downtown Des Moines, what's now downtown, between 4th, 6th, Grain, and what's now Locust Streets. It was 2.5 blocks north of the corner of 5th and Walnut Streets, which was the city's commercial center at the time, and within a block of every streetcar line in the city. And I'm sure that was very important back then to be near the streetcar lines. So in the first game at the new facility, the Hawkeyes beat the Sioux City Cornhuskers 3-2, May 5th, 1900. That year they finished 1.5 games behind first place Denver. And then a year later, in 1902, the team was called the Midgets because the players did not stack up to the standard of play in the league. And 1 year later, the team was renamed the Undertakers because that's what manager Joe Quinn's off-season occupation was. Then in 1904, the club was renamed the Politicians in a contest conducted by the Des Moines Register and Leader. So in 3 years, they had 3 different team names. And then in 1905, the team was renamed the Underwriters, once again as a result of a newspaper contest. And the team won the Western League title that season and repeated as the champs in 1906. And then 2 years later, the club was sold to a Chicago businessman, John Higgins, and the downtown ballpark was demolished due to urban redevelopment. So they had to play at another ball field on the east side of Des Moines near what is now the State Fairgrounds. Then when they were known as the Boosters, Des Moines captured the Western League title in 1909 with a 93-59 record, and their winning percentage was .612, which is very important because actually Sioux City won more games, 94, but they lost 60, and they had a .610 winning percentage, so Des Moines beat them by 2 thousandths. Then we go to the 1910s. In 1912, Tom Fairweather who served on the city council in Des Moines. I was actually mayor while I owned the team for a couple of years. And Frank Isbell, he played Major League Ball, bought the Des Moines franchise. They bought a site at 6 and Holcomb Avenues on the north side of Des Moines. There's a high school located there now, North High School, for a new ball park called the Western League Park, or a League Park. And the Boosters won the 1915 and 1917 Western League titles. They beat Hutchinson, Kansas 4-2 in the 1917 finals. After failing to finish in the first division for 5 straight years, the Demons won the Western League title in 1925 with a 98-70 record, 1 game better than Denver. They repeated the Western League champs in 1926, despite winning 1 last game. Then second place Oklahoma City, which had 2 more losses. Now there's been several people are often amazed that so many big name ball players came through Des Moines, even though they may have not played for Des Moines teams. In exhibitions, especially like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Bob Feller, Satchel Paige. In 1926, get this right here. Babe Ruth came to town, played an exhibition game at Western League Park there. He hit 3 balls over the outfield fence during the game, and 3 balls over the outfield fence, 3 homers in batting practice. So he hit 6 home runs that day in an exhibition game. October 27th, 1926. After arriving by train in Des Moines at 8 a.m., he ate breakfast with Demons President Lee Kaiser, among others, and visited disabled soldiers in a Knoxville hospital that's like half hour away from Des Moines, before suiting up for the exhibition game that started at 2:30 p.m. When he arrived at the hospital by car, he made a short speech to the residents who were able to leave their rooms. Afterward, Ruth visited some of the patients who were bedfast or could not leave their wards. Des Moines Register sports editor Sec Taylor wrote the next day, and Sec Taylor is an icon around here. He was the Des Moines Register sports writer-editor from 1914 till the time he died covering spring training in Florida. I think it was in the late 60s or 70s. Unfortunately, some of them were unable to recognize him, but many did, and apparently enjoyed and appreciated the opportunity to shake the hand and hear the voice of the great baseball player. And after skipping lunch, he put on a football uniform and had his picture taken at the ballpark with the captains of the Drake University football team. Drake is a private school in Des Moines, size of Bradley, and they compete in the same conference. After changing into his baseball uniform, he hit 3 balls over the outfield fence and played all 9 innings in the exhibition, where he hit 3 more homers. And his team won 14-9. The Des Moines Tribune reported the next day it didn't take Ruth long to get the range of the farthest corner of the park, as he drove 6 balls out of the lot in less than 10 minutes. And all the clouds were terrific liners. Now, Des Moines is sometimes credited with having the first night baseball game under permanent lights. But I found through research that's not entirely true. They were the second city to have a night game under permanent lights, but they were the first to have a nationally broadcast, at least minor league game, as carried by NBC radio network throughout the country and even overseas on shortwave radio, I think. Des Moines Demons and Independence, Kansas producers both claimed the honor of hosting the first professional baseball game played under permanent lights in organized ball. On Friday, May 2nd, 1930, the Demons beat the Wichita Aviators 13-6 under permanent lights at Western League Park. The audience included Branch Rickey and Cincinnati Reds president Sidney Weil. 2 days earlier, the visiting Muskogee, Oklahoma Chiefs defeated Independence 13-3 under permanent lights. So actually, they really deserve the credit for having the first night game. Coming off a 5-win, 6-loss road trip to start the season, the Demons and their management expected the new lights to attract a record crowd for the home opener. Tests have indicated that the playing conditions will be as suitable as the customary daylight, the Des Moines Tribune reported. And it turned out that was. It's significant because at the time there were 24 baseball leagues with 176 teams in organized ball, but none of the 176 176 club owners saw the possibility of night baseball in the same light as Lee Kaiser, the Demons president. So not one of them was willing to risk his finances to promote the new venture. The Des Moines Register's Bert McGrain wrote. So of course they tested the lights. Took a couple of days to do that. Really created a lot of buzz when people saw the sky lit up, and I guess the birds thought it was day, not night, and they congregated around the ballpark and the lights. Depending on the source, the highly anticipated game on May 2nd drew 10,000 to 12,000 spectators, or twice the normal number for a home opener. In fact, they had so many people there that men in suits and fedoras were sitting on the ground along the foul lines and formed a human warning track in front of the outfield walls, partially obscuring the advertisements that decorated them. Mike Wellman wrote in the Des Moines Register in 2015. The Demons put the game away early. They scored 11 runs and 7 hits and 5 walks in the first inning. So basically the game was over. Bud Tinning, the winning pitcher, he next year he's had a 24-2 1-loss record and eventually made it to the big leagues with the Chicago Cubs. And Stan Keys, another pretty famous minor leaguer in Des Moines, he got 4 hits that night. Next year, he won the Triple Crown in the Western League with a .369 batting average, 38 home runs, and 160 runs batted in. Another significant game is the exhibition featuring Bob Feller and Satchel Paige. And of course, Feller was from Van Meter, grew up on a farm outside of Van Meter, Iowa, and that's like only 20 minutes, half hour west of here. They called him Rapper Robert because he could throw so hard. So he pitched against Feller October 7th, 1936 at Western League Park. And at the time, he was only 17 years old. The Negro National League All-Stars beat the white Major League All-Stars 4-2, although Feller, just 17 years old, outpitched Page. What really matters is that 5,000 Iowans got to see just how great a pitcher 17-year-old Bob Feller in Van Meter, Iowa really is, the Register's Leighton House wrote the next day. He was facing some of the best black hitters in the Negro Leagues. And he still struck out 8 batters in 3 innings. He gave up a scratch hit when he failed to cover first base on a pop-up that fell between him and the first baseman, Johnny Mize. who got to the ball in time to make the play. Or not make the play. Page fanned 7 of the 11 batters he faced and allowed 1 hit. By former St. Louis Browns third baseman Heine Muller. Feller pitched another game. Well, I think it was 1951 after his World War II. Came back. His hometown was having a special day, and the proceeds were going to go towards a new community center in Van Meter named after his family. He didn't do so well in that game because he had a good season at 51, but he probably hadn't pitched since the season ended, so he was a little rusty. That's also in the book. How am I doing on time here?
You're pretty good. You're about 30 minutes in.
Okay, I'll just do a couple more here. Bruins, the first black player for the Bruins was Gene Baker. Anybody remember him? He was from Davenport, Iowa. He and Ernie Banks were one of the first black double play combination in Major League history in 53. But in 50, he played in Des Moines. He was the first black to play for the Des Moines franchise. He hit 321 in 49 games for the Des Moines Bruins, who lost in the first round of the Western League playoffs after finishing 84 and 70 under manager Charlie Root during the regular season. Once again, Root was a famous Cub pitcher. He still holds the record for most wins by a Cub pitcher. Yeah, he and Stanek also managed here during that time. In his debut at Sioux City, Baker had a bunt single and a double in his debut, although the Bruins lost 5-4. He had played in Springfield in AAA under Hack to start this season, but I don't think he was playing much, so they shipped him back to Des Moines. And Root said, he's just the type of player we've needed all season, referring to Baker scoring from first base after 2 errant throws by the Sioux pitcher and first baseman in the second inning. Did you see how he ran those bases? And did you see him slide into third? It was the most beautiful slide I ever saw in my life. So that's pretty good praise. Then another big figure in Des Moines baseball history is Vida Blue. I suppose you've heard of him. Of course, he was with the Oakland A's later. The second or third team in the minor leagues was here in Des Moines, and he still holds the record for strikeouts by a pitcher for the Des Moines franchise and strikeouts in a season. But he made his AAA debut on April 29th, 1971, 1970, at Sec Taylor Stadium. That's the forerunner to the present stadium. It's at the same site. But in the process, he broke the old franchise record of 12 strikeouts in a game. That was his first appearance since April 11th because he had 6 months of military duty and he didn't get to spring training until March 8th. The Oaks manager at the time was Sherman Lawler, the old Chicago White Sox catcher. The Des Moines Register's Bill Bryson said afterwards the Blues' command of the curveball surprised the Oaks and the Oakland A's minor league pitching coach Warren Hacker, another familiar name. He was the pitcher for the Cubs, a former major league hurler. Light ahead, tremendous deuce curveball. Catcher Gene Tennis concurred. It's the best I've ever seen him throw. So, yeah, I just try to recount a lot of historic games, players here, going up all the way through the 2023 season. Of course, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the Des Moines would play their major league affiliate at least once during the season. So I've recounted all those games. A lot of them, with the Cubs, would come here and play. There's even an exhibition game here between the Cleveland Indians and San Francisco Giants. I don't know why those two teams came, but they came. That's when the Giants had Willie Mays. Those guys, Indians had Rocky Colavito, who just died, I see here yesterday or the day before, early win, Minnie Minoso. So for a minor league franchise, there's a lot of famous players who have come through here, either played or managed. Ryan Sandberg managed here. I think played at least one exhibition game here. So, yeah. Now, anybody have questions?
I have a
Steve,
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, two things. Did you have a publisher for this book, or did you self-publish it?
Well, I had Amazon Books Publishing. I work with them, but I guess it's still considered self-publishing.
Okay. I just wondered, I was looking it up and there's a Kindle option too. My bigger question is really about why wouldn't SABR put that article on their website? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. I didn't know.
I
I
was-
was trying to look and see if there was another one already out there and couldn't find one. So I was just curious.
The angle was that it was, despite being the smallest AAA market, and it's been the smallest for years, it has drawn consistently very well for such a small market. But I mean, Des Moines itself is like 205,000. The metropolitan area is 500,000, but you do get a lot of people from outside of the metro area. You get a lot of people from Minnesota, even Illinois come here because it's much cheaper than seeing the Cubs play in Chicago. So why not come here, buy a reserved seat ticket for $10, not 70 at Wrigley or 6 or whatever it is. The food's cheaper, so a family can actually afford a minor league game compared to a major league game. So, although I saw today that I looked at their attendance for this last season, that it had slipped to 407,000, and I don't know why that is. I think the pandemic did a lot to dampen people's enthusiasm to going out to big events.
Well, you also talked about people from Minnesota, but now that the Saints are AAA, it may have drawn some people up there away from them.
Yeah, and Omaha too, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, people can go here to Omaha, St. Paul to watch them play too.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Well, I have a question for you. So a lot of my research has been focused on semi-pro ball in Central Illinois and actually much smaller communities than what you're talking about. But what I've actually found is that, every once in a while, my big focus is really on some of the barnstorming teams that had come through that particular community. That's what they were kind of known for. But every once in a while, you just kind of stumble across an interesting little side story related to a team in town. What in particular maybe jumped out at you that you didn't expect to find, but you did?
Probably the most surprising thing was all the Negro League games played here. And I didn't really find out about that until the SABR National Conference in Chicago a couple of years ago. And they always produce, a booklet of articles pertaining to that area, baseball related articles pertaining to that area. And one of the articles was about all the Negro League games played in the Midwest and especially Iowa. Actually, Davenport, Iowa had more Negro League games than Des Moines did. But so I go into all those games in the book too. And actually, the first major league game in Iowa was not the Field of Dreams game between the Sox and, what was it?
Oh, Sox and Yankees.
Yankees, yeah, in Dyersville. It's actually the first game was actually in 19. May 27th, 1937, between the Birmingham Black Barons and the Cincinnati Tigers at Western League Park in Des Moines. That was really the first major league game played in Iowa. And the reason that's now considered major league was because in 2020, I think it was 2020, where the commissioner came out and said, we'll consider the Negro Leagues a major league and we'll include all their stats, in major league stats. So that really should be considered the first major league game in Iowa, not the Field of Dreams game. So that's all covered in the book too.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, there are a lot of great Negro League players played here. Buck O'Neill, Willard Brown, Willie Wells. Several, great Negro League players played here at one time or another.
So Steve, speaking of that, when I was looking at the timeline on your website, I noticed that Wilkinson had some connection as well. Can you talk about
should
that
mention
bit?
that, yeah. So J.L. Wilkinson, this white guy from Algona, Iowa. Algona is north of Des Moines, closer to Minnesota. But he put together an all-nations barnstorming team, I think in 1912. But it was based in Des Moines. But they would barnstorm throughout the Midwest. And it was called All Nations because he had blacks, whites, Native Americans, I don't know, Cubans, he had all nationalities on there. This is long before, of course, there was integration in the major leagues. And it's pretty successful. It was based in Des Moines. But then in 1915, he moved down to Kansas City. And that eventually became the Kansas City Monarchs, which were considered, of course, kind of the Yankees of the Negro Leagues. But owned by this white guy from Algona, Iowa, probably the only white owner of a Negro Leagues team. But that became very famous, of course. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. I had another question too. I noticed, or you mentioned in your bio that you were an usher. When you were an usher of the team, who was the best player that you saw when you were ushering?
Well, yeah, that was right around the time of Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Schwarber, those guys, of course, that went up in 16. I did see Rizzo play here, but that was before I moved up here. Yeah, I saw Rizzo this last day in Des Moines. He had a game-winning home run, and then 2 days later, he was called up to Chicago and never left. But yeah, the best players were probably Baez and Bryant.
Wow, so you saw the minor league team up to the World Series winning team. Wow, that's great. Okay.
A lot of those guys from that team or the year before I've seen a statistic on how many players in the Cubs roster, World Series roster in 16 playoff roster had played in Des Moines. It is the majority of them had played here before they went up there. Albert Almora. Yeah. Kind of got spoiled those years.
Well, thank you. Were there anyone else had any other questions? And Steve also shared some images that I'll bring up while so let me do that.
I was going to ask a quick question. What's your next project? Because everybody in SABR has a side project that they're starting, right?
Probably just going back to writing bios and game stories. I don't know that I want to produce another book unless somebody pays for it. I'm gonna write it. But there's a cost involved in doing it. So yeah, that's the old Des Moines Demons. That's what the Demons logo looked like.
I've got one more to share here. Let me get this one up. Is that
That
one
looks
showing?
kind of, yeah, that, you know, it kind of looks similar to the Chicago Cub programs of that era. I wonder if it's done by the same guy. The guy who was doing the Chicago Cub programs was a artist for the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, I believe. So I don't know if he did those too, but
Yeah, if not, the style is certainly reminiscent. So
yeah, I go to card shows around here and try to find old Des Moines baseball stuff. I found a yearbook or a scorebook from one when the Oaks were around. Oakland was the first team to have the AAA franchise here. Then it was the White Sox were here for a few years. Houston Astros were here for 1 year. I don't know why Houston was ever in Des Moines, but the Cubs have been here since 1981. One of the longest affiliations with any major league team around. I think Omaha's been a Kansas City Royals affiliate longer than the I-Cubs have been a Chicago Cubs affiliate, but not by much. Yeah, so if you ever want to see a ball game, inexpensive ball game, come to Des Moines. We can go to a game. I'll show you around Des Moines. It's pretty easy to get to. It's right on 2 interstates.
Hey, Steve, I will definitely take you up on that offer.
And as an airport too, you can fly into the airport. We're only like 5 minutes. We live in the southeast side of Des Moines, and I can pick you up at the airport.
Amazing. That sounds like an incredible time. Tour, though, has to be included.
Sure. I love giving tours. In fact, some other family members, that's what I should do now in my retirement is give tours, you know, and guess I get charged for them and make some money.
Steve, may I ask you another question?
Sure. Fire
When you-
away.
When you write these autobiographies or these articles that you send into
Yeah.
the newspaper, how do you personally deem them acceptable to submit to these places? Because I like to write as well, but every time I think to myself, man, it needs a little more information, or I'm repeating somebody else's. Can you just explain that to me? Because I'm new to SABR. So
Well, yeah, I had a professor in journalism school at Bradley tell me once that it's always stuck with me that if you accumulate enough facts, the story pretty much writes itself.
true.
And I cannot write fiction. I have a brother who's was an English major, and he had a PhD in English. So, but he writes fictional stuff and poetry. I cannot do that. I really have no interest in it. But I like doing research. So, you know, research your subject as much as you can. And it just kind of goes from there. I mean, I know a lot about baseball history, but that doesn't mean I don't have to research it. And in the book, I got 500 some footnotes in the back of the book. That may be overkill, but so you can look up those articles and read the whole article by looking at the footnotes.
That's incredible to add.
The Des
That's
Moines
something I would
Library,
look for.
the Des Moines Library probably has them on my available too, but I did it on newspapers.com. I mean, that's by subscription, but I think it's worth it as much as research as I do. And then the thing with SABR is you send it in, and then it's first somebody reads it and see if it's acceptable. Then they have another person fact check it, and another person kind of proofreads it for style, you know, and it's in the right order. So it goes through a pretty strong vetting process, which, you know, I'm thankful for, because, I mean, I did a lot of copy editing in my time too. And even though you think you're a good writer, there's probably still another way to say it. So,
True, true.
I'm sorry, Christina. I'm a fact checker.
yeah.
I do fact checking for SABR.
Okay. Maybe you've done
Cool.
some of mine then. I don't
I'll
know.
have to go back and look and see if I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fact check the fact checker,
I'll-
right?
I'll also
Right.
also note a little pitch for SABR here. As part of your SABR membership and the research resources, that includes newspapers.com.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
You
I'll
know,
put that.
Chad, because I have my own subscription, but do you think it's as robust as the regular one, or is it limited?
That I don't know.
I don't
Okay.
think it's
They
as
have the-
robust.
Yeah,
It
they have
doesn't feel like it is, but I didn't know.
the World
That's why
Collection
I have my
Archive
own
version.
subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
you do go to SABR's website on papers of record, there's an extreme amount of information that you can get in addition to
Oh, yeah.
Sporting news.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, sporting. I've used that a lot.
Yep.
yeah,
And now
Yeah.
they've got some black papers,
Yeah.
newspapers too.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
used
quite a
those.
bit. Yeah.
the ProQuest historical black newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say on a side note too, you mentioned all of your footnotes and endnotes, and you know, some people have actually joked, they're like, "Wow, you put in a lot for the bios that I write." But I think it's actually interesting to go back when you're reading a story, a full book, or just a bio or a game summary, whatever it might be. You never know with some of those notes what other sources might open up an interesting story of your own. And I've always found that interesting. I've always wanted to get that point into my SABR experiences, that something that I put together was a footnote in somebody else's, and you know that kind of leads to something else. So I think that's just a fascinating thing to make sure you're documenting as much as you are. So
You know, SABR's style guide is different, but it used to be you could see how much research was done by counting the number of IBIDs. See how many use the same article, you know, for different
Right.
points.
Yeah.
Well, as a librarian, I love to hear 500 references. That just
Oh.
warms
Yeah.
my heart. So
Well, good. Because I don't know, it might have been overkill. Of course, you know, I had this professional proofreader, very nice lady out in California, but we kind of went around and around on these endnotes because they didn't format. Well, of course, when I was writing them in the Word document, they would show on each page, at the bottom of each page, instead of at the end of each chapter. So she had to transpose it from the bottom of the page, set up a whole new end of the book. And then we debated whether to number them 1 through 500 or 1 through 20, the first chapter, 1 through 30, the second chapter. She wanted to do it that way. I didn't care. But now I've seen in a lot of books, they just list them 1 through 500. Not, we would have saved ourselves a lot of stress by just numbering 1 through 500. She had a devil of a time doing that. Oh, well, you learn as you go along.
we have about 5 minutes left. So probably have time
Okay.
for maybe 1 or 2 more questions if there are any.
Yeah, do you have the link there for the book? The Pug Fireball and Company.com.
Yep. We've
You
got
can
in the
go to
chat.
that link and order the book off there. It also tells more about me, the book, and Amazon Publishing did a nice job of including all sorts of other blogs about baseball history, baseball in Iowa. Yeah,
I particularly enjoyed looking at the timeline.
and timeline.
Yeah, after you sent that one was very interesting. Well, you know, reading about Wilkinson, for instance, and some other things. So
Yeah.
if you haven't looked at that yet, I put that in the chat. I also put a link to Steve Seamhead's article. I did find that link to that, so that's in there. And then also,
I'm doing a podcast now.
oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I've done 11 people so far, including the former Cubs, Jim Marshall, the manager, first baseman. He's like in his 90s now, but he's still going. Lives out in Arizona. Byron Brown, a former outfielder. He's on a podcast. So I've done 2 or 3 former Cubs. Oh, Rich
We
Nye,
come
the
across-
pitcher. Rich Nye,
Oh,
the
yeah.
pitcher. I've done him. He was on a podcast. Yeah.
I don't know if you've come across this in your research, but Bob Feller had a pretty notorious Legion catcher. You know who that was? I bet you do.
Niall Kinnick.
Yes. 1937, I think, Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
The University of Iowa Stadium named
Iowa's
after him.
only Heisman Trophy winner Niall Kinnick from
Yep.
Adel, Iowa, another small town northwest
He was
of
not-
Des Moines.
Yeah, he was Bob Feller's catcher in Legion Ball.
Yeah. How about that? Heisman Trophy winner and a Hall of Fame
Yep.
pitcher.
And a war hero, that was lost
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, spread the word about the book, please. And
I will be buying it.
okay.
Holiday season, right?
So let's
Make a good Christmas
You can
gift.
gift yourself any
Yes.
day, Bill.
Yeah.
so why don't we give Steve a round of applause for his
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
and
Maybe I'll see you at Principal Park sometime.
yes.
I've been
Yeah.
there. It's a nice place.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, they play the Iowa State High School state tournament there too. So,
Well, they did.
or they did, yeah.
But now that the season has been changed because of realignment stuff in the minor leagues, that last week of July was always the state tournament, but
Right.
they can't always get the ballpark, so they've had it like in Iowa City, Coralville, other places now,
Okay.
which is too bad.
I just know I was there when Solon was in it, so I knew at that time it was in Des Moines.
Yeah, it was always fun for high school kids to get to play on basically a major league quality field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So
thank you again.
yeah, thanks so much. And keep an eye out on our social media, that sort of stuff, for any upcoming talks that we'll be scheduling. I'm working on some of those right now, and hopefully
Okay.
we'll share that info soon. But I'll end the night with wishing everyone happy holidays, it being the season, and hopefully everyone gets some fun baseball stuff as gifts in this holiday season.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Good night.
Night.